everyone. I think that's my cue to get us started. My name is Katie Harrison, and I am dialing in from my home in the west side of the state in Butler County. And on behalf of the co-chairs of the 2021 WIP Spring Conference, Dusty Kirk, Liz Trescari, and myself, as well as the entire WIP Spring Conference Committee, we would like to welcome all of you to this year's conference and thank you for attending this virtual event, which very apropos falls on International Women's Day this year. We are delighted we are able to continue the WIP's tradition of great programming even as we continue through this global pandemic. Certainly the last year has highlighted the invaluable contributions of women across the globe, but also the continued need for organizations like the WIP, not just to continue the advancement of Pennsylvania's women lawyers, but for the good of women across the Commonwealth. So thanks to all of you for your contributions and for being here. And we are very excited that today's program with Joy Gordon, the CEO of Dress for Success, will surely be inspiring to all of us. We would also like to welcome and thank PBA President David Schwager. And David, on behalf of the WIP, I would like to thank you for your continued support. In the last year, I am told, during a pandemic, David has attended every WIP-wide meeting and event. So David, thank you so much for your incredible support. And again, welcome to everyone. We know you will enjoy this programming today. And with that, I would like to invite David to say a few words to us.
Thank you so very much, Katie, and thank you to you and Dusty and Liz and the WIP leadership group, Missy and Stephanie and Jen, for the fine work organizing today's conference and for inviting me to join you today, and for all that you do for WIP and the PBA as a whole. You know, on behalf of the PBA, I welcome all of you to the virtual spring conference being held today on International Women's Day during Women's History Month. This month, and today in particular, we celebrate the important achievements of women in our world, our nation, and in our profession. We raise awareness against bias, and we take action for equality. The PBA has long done all of those things while maximizing and strengthening involvement of women in all aspects of PBA activities, including governance and leadership, not the least of which was the formation and continued support and promotion of the WIP itself. PBA also has played a critical role in maximizing representation of women in law firms, the courts, and in all facets of the profession. The PBA's commitment remains just as strong today, and I commit to you that the work will continue until the job is done and all glass ceilings are shattered. On a personal note, I celebrate the women who have had the greatest impact on my life today. I must, of course, start at the beginning with my beloved mother, Margot Schwager of blessed memory. As you may have read in last spring's issue of the Pennsylvania Lawyer, in 1938, my mother escaped Nazi Germany as a teenager with virtually nothing to her name and came to this country and became a successful and respected member of our community. She was forced to leave her public elementary school at an early age due to the enactment of the anti-Semitic Nuremberg laws. She lost her friends, her entire way of life, and ultimately her parents, who were shot on arrival at the Treblinka concentration camp on September 29, 1942. While she was fortunate to be able to come to America, she had to work as soon as she arrived in New York and therefore had no time to resume her education. She started off as a nanny and ultimately went to work in factories in Manhattan. Yet my mother was someone very special, always with a smile on her face and a kind word on her tongue. And where my parents and family left off, my beautiful wife, Lori, took over. While I've been busy with practicing law and my Pennsylvania bar activities, Lori not only executes meticulously her significant commercial banking responsibilities at Bank of America, but also took the leading role in the care and nurturing of our twins, Melissa and Max, who incidentally just turned 29 this past weekend. In addition, Lori spends significant energy on philanthropic and civic pursuits. She's an officer of the Scranton Chamber, a committed advocate on the bank committee, advancing the causes of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And apropos to Joy, and as our keynote speaker today, Lori's been a longtime dedicated board member of Dress for Success of Luzerne County, working with another of today's conference attendees who served many years as the president of that board, Luzerne County Bar Association President Kathy O'Donnell. Finally, I must salute my daughter, Melissa. You see, Melissa has some significant special needs, intellectual disabilities, and because she's a twin of a typical brother, we noticed her delays at an extremely early age and got her involved with therapies and early intervention well before her first birthday. As she grew, Lori and I did our best to figure out the educational system and the options and opportunities available to Melissa with little guidance. It was mostly like a blindfolded scavenger hunt. Fortunately, in the final analysis, we seem to have made many of the right choices, and Melissa has developed into such a friendly and happy young woman. She lives with 3 other women in Bradford County, and until COVID, worked a few days a week in a nursing home, which I hope she can resume once it's safe to do so. She's shown me how to cope with whatever life hands you and to do it with a smile on your face. It is to these 3 most important women in my life to whom I dedicate my own personal International Women's Day today. But back to PBA matters. WIP is so critical to the ongoing success of the PBA. We must continue to all work together to make the PBA indispensable to all Pennsylvania lawyers, from the time that they're in law school, during their early years of practice, and all the way through their careers. We need each of you to stay active and involved, but we must not be satisfied with the status quo. The PBA has 6,835 women members, and about half of active PBA members are women. They number 1,391. Yet WIP membership, including male members like me, numbers less than 700. In order for the PBA to remain vibrant and attractive to the lawyers of Pennsylvania, we need the WIP to be the best it can be. We need WIP to reach out to the other 6,000 women PBA members and get them more actively involved. And we need all of you to not only be active in WIP, we need your activity and involvement in the PBA generally. Join one of our 58 committees or 18 sections and join me in PBA leadership. It's a great way to network with practitioners across the state. I know that we would love to have been together in person, but of course, COVID had other plans for us. During these turbulent times, the PBA has led the way in advocating in all branches of government on behalf of our profession, our clients, and the justice system. And you've all heard from me too many times for me to recount here for you again, all the ways in which the PBA has been working for you since the outbreak of the pandemic. But last May, I formed the Joint Task Force on the Continuity of Delivery of Legal Services to develop recommendations to update processes and technologies to enable the legal system to continue to operate under similar future emergency circumstances. Last week, the task force report was publicly released. Its recommendations include, number 1, any future declaration of emergency must recognize that legal services are indeed essential. Number 2, there must be meaningful statewide leadership and accountability to enforce health and safety standards uniformly and consistently on a statewide basis. It should not be left to the discretion of individual courts or judges. We need to work towards the establishment of a uniform electronic case filing system for Pennsylvania. The use by the courts and administrative agencies of advanced communication technologies like Zoom, such as what we're on right now, to conduct proceedings when appropriate and practical, consistent with constitutional and statutory requirements. We need to attack the backlog in civil cases through enhanced use of ADR methods. Courts and county bar associations should explore options for making space and technology resources available to pro se litigants. You know, never has it been more clear that if you're facing the challenges that all of us have faced, and if you're not a member of the organized bar, you and in turn your clients are missing out. But you didn't sign up for the conference to hear me pitch the PBA. So in closing, I thank you very much for allowing me to join you today. Now I'm pleased to turn things over to conference co-chair Dusty Kirk. I thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for all you do on behalf of women and the PBA. It's really, really important. So we are delighted to have Joy Gordon, CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide, with us today on International Women's Day and at our spring conference for empowering women. And you heard about the challenge that David was talking about, but this year, the International Women's Day is Choose Your Challenge. So I think the challenge has come to us in the form of this pandemic, and more women have been put out of work during this time than probably in any other time in our history. So Joy is so active in dealing with this as the CEO for Dress for Success worldwide. For her 19 years of leadership, she has been empowering women. She has empowered more than 1 million women to become economically advanced in 150 cities and 20 countries. She has expanded the organization's reach and, most importantly, its programming, offering a full continuum of services that help women secure employment, advance in their careers, and achieve financial freedom. And as you know, when women achieve financial success, their families are lifted out of poverty. So Joy's focus on empowering disadvantaged women is not only exemplary, but it's also gathered national attention, and she has received so many awards over the years for her leadership and her dedication. But most recently in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, she was chosen as the 2020 Chief Executive Award from the New York Society of Association for Executives. So I'm going to turn it over to Joy now. I think you'll really enjoy hearing from her.
My incarceration was a direct result of my substance abuse problem. I had a drug addiction. I was addicted to crack cocaine, which lasted between 10 to 12 years, ultimately resulting in a period of incarceration. I was introduced to Dress for Success Cincinnati while I was incarcerated at River City Correctional Facility. And there was a phase in that program that allowed you to start looking for employment prior to being released. But of course, I didn't have any clothing. I didn't have interviewing clothes. So our case manager, it was a reentry case manager, took us to Dress for Success. And I was actually introduced, and there's a significance of Dress for Success Cincinnati in their beginning for me. As a young girl growing up in Cincinnati, I was always a chubby girl, wore large size shoes. So for the size shoe that I wore, there weren't a lot of young lady shoes in Cincinnati at that time. And this one shoe store opened up in the city. And that shoe store was called Magnafeet. And Magnafeet was the place where I could go and finally not have to scream through the shoes to say what fits me, or there's only 2 or 3 that fit a young lady that's not too old. So Dress for Success initial store, or, initial office was housed where that shoe store used to exist. So walking in, there was a sense of comfort, because this had became a place where I walked in and as a young girl would get happy because I knew I was going to leave with some new shoes. I knew I was going to leave with something. And walking into that, it was that comfort of the space. So I was able to engage in conversation about the space. They were talking about, Dress for Success and the services that they provide and the opportunity to suit you. And I'll never forget, Miss Carol was the lady who helped me at that time. And she made me feel so comforted, right? Not embarrassed that I was still incarcerated and coming from a correctional facility to get this outfit so I could look for a job. But she treated me with human dignity. She gave me opportunities. She complimented me when I tried on the suits and the outfits. And it gave me the confidence to go out and get this job. And then not only that, have the ability to have some clothes inside the correctional facility so that I could start employment prior to release. They started a group called Professional Women's Group. And it was for women who had came through the program, who got a job, to start introducing you to various topics, to start introducing you to opportunities that traditionally I might not have ever encountered. A couple of the classes were about financial aid and returning to college. Another class, I'm a homeowner now. I'm actually an investor now, and I have rental property. But my first property that I rent out has so much significance because I thought home ownership was outside the norm for a person like me. I've owned that home for 15 years now, and it's all because I sat in a room, a professional women's group, and an individual from the financial institution who sat on the board started talking about home ownership. There were individual experts around credit. What is credit, and how do you make sure your credit is healthy? Because your credit becomes some of the upward mobility in obtaining some things in life. Even if you don't use it on credit, you buy it. Some things look at your credit, such as your car insurance and different things of that nature. I didn't know all these tricks. And once I did become employed, once I was able to gain employment, I never paid attention to a retirement plan, the benefits of planning for my future, because I was a person who was used to living in today. I didn't know how to long-term plan. But then when I seen the power of investing in myself in my retirement, and that I wasn't giving it away, so understanding all of that. And when I switch jobs, what do I do with this? How do I leave it, or how do I roll it over into a 401k? I knew none of this. But I was introduced to all that through Dress for Success Professional Women's Group, which is why it has become a way for me. It has become a way of investing in my future, but not only in my future. I know the importance of that now. So as a president CEO of a national organization that focuses on formerly incarcerated and directly impacted people, the majority of my team have been formerly incarcerated. I have gentlemen who have served 27 years, 8 years, 5 years. But I found out through payroll that they were not investing in their retirement. So I strategically, now our onboarding, we do a financial education class. I start to educate them because I remember being in that seat and nobody told me about it until I went to Dress for Success. So when you think about Dress for Success and the individual sitting in front of you, it's bigger than that. It's because of what I learned at Dress for Success. I'm now able to institute within an organization that I run nationally and around other individual leaders and volunteers we have, sharing that information that I learned. So it's bigger. It actually has tentacles out into a bigger, broader agenda. It just may have started with that person sitting in the room at that time. If anyone is looking for opportunities to advance society, to advance the lives or change the trajectory of lives, Dress for Success will be the place. As I shared in my story, it goes beyond the one individual. It impacts their immediate family. It impacts the trajectory of the history of their children to break the cycle of poverty, break the cycle of incarceration, drug addiction. When you invest in women, you're investing in a future. You're investing in society as a whole. And again, it doesn't just stop, because when you give a woman knowledge, women always share that knowledge. So while it may be the person in front of you, you think your donation is supporting, your donation is going much further than that, because the knowledge gained is knowledge shared when investing in women.
What an absolutely powerful message that is from Deanna. Hello, everyone. I'm Joy Gordon, CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide, and just honored to be here with you today. Just to give you a little bit more about Deanna. Of course, she mentioned in her remarks that she first came through Dress for Success in Cincinnati, Ohio. And when she first came through Dress for Success, she was recommended to us by the court system. She was addicted to drugs and had spent a very short, but still a considerable amount of time locally being locked up as part of their system. She came through Dress for Success, as you've heard. She benefited from a number of our programs. Every opportunity we put in front of her, she took it. She went back to school. She got her bachelor's degree. She got her master's degree in criminal justice. And as mentioned to you before by her, she today is the CEO and president of a national nonprofit organization called Just Leadership USA, focused specifically on those who have been incarcerated. Her nonprofit organization now is here in New York. So as somebody who also lives in New York, she's a friend to me here in the CEO suite of nonprofit leaders in New York City. I know all of you are from the Pennsylvania area, but we have a jail system in New York, one of the largest in the country, called Rikers. And she is credited for dismantling the Rikers criminal justice system. She is an advocate for what is right in the world. And so she has had this position as their CEO, but she also worked for the Department of Justice under the Obama administration as a senior policy advisor. I mean, let's just step back. This was a woman who came out of prison, who came through Dress for Success, benefited from our programs, went to school, became educated, and became an advocate. And when she worked for the Obama administration, she oversaw the Second Chance Act and the portfolio and managed the agreements between the federal agencies and the many, many programs that worked on giving people a second chance. She's the reason why I have been at Dress for Success for over 20 years. Just the Deannas of the world are the reason why this organization attracted me some 22 years ago, when I was a freshly minted lawyer in New York City, working as an assistant district attorney, and heard about Dress for Success on the news. I'll talk to you a little bit later about how that came to pass, but I just want you to know that I wanted to be part of something greater than myself, and Dress for Success gave me and women like me around the world an opportunity to leave an imprint in other women's lives. As Dusty mentioned to you, Dress for Success first birthed in the basement of a church in New York City some 24 years ago, now has 150 offices in over 20 countries around the world. This was an organization that started in the middle of welfare to work movement with President Clinton. The focus was on helping people who were first, second, and maybe even third generation welfare recipients get off of public assistance and become employed. And so our founder, who also happens to be a lawyer, was in her second year of law school at NYU when she got an inheritance from her great-grandfather, Poppy Max. And it was a relatively small inheritance, but for Nancy, no donation has ever been too small. She received $5,000, and she took that $5,000, met with two nuns in Harlem. Nancy is a Jewish woman who went directly to the nuns and said, if anybody can make $5,000 spread, it's got to be two nuns. And it was the nuns in Harlem who said to Nancy, our biggest challenge is that women are coming out of prison, expected to find jobs, yet they have nothing to wear. So what if there was an organization created to give women clothing to go on job interviews? It was the nuns, Sister Mary Catherine and Sister Ernie, who decided to name the organization Dress for Success. Nancy invested $5,000 in an organization which was about giving women clothing. What it really became is an organization that not just dressed women on the outside, but really addressed what was going on the inside for women. It was really a very small operation in New York City, but surrounding that small operation was women with big hearts who really did believe that if we planted a seed in a woman and gave her the confidence that she needed, the wardrobe that allowed her to walk through a door feeling dressed for success, she could in fact land a job. And as Dusty mentioned to you earlier, when she lands a job, she not only changes her life, but the majority of the women we serve are mothers. And in many cases, they're single mothers. So we not just change her life, we change the trajectory of her children's lives. And the reality is that if you can move children out of poverty in their childhood, there is a greater likelihood that they will never be impoverished as adults. And so how we do that is getting her mom and his mom back to work. I became very attracted to this cause and this movement, and to watch Dress for Success grow from a basement of a church operation to now having helped over 1.2 million women get back to work in 2 decades has really been a labor of love for me. And to realize that this can't be an organization that just hands out clothing to women that need it. That the reality is that the women that walk through the doors of Dress for Success need so much more than clothes. I've heard people talk about marginalized communities and women who are disadvantaged, and all that could be true about Dress for Success. But I think the best description of a woman who walks through our door at Dress for Success is that she's underestimated. That's how I would describe her. If given the opportunity in life, she would show us what she's capable of. And that's the women who walk through our doors every single day. I have met women who today came through Dress for Success a decade or so ago, who are detectives with the police department, who are managers, who are directors, who are lawyers, who have their masters, and some who have their doctorate degrees. I have women who have come through Dress for Success's doors, who were homeless, who were ex-offenders, who were addicted, who had crisis riddled through their lives. But because they walked through the door of an organization that didn't judge them, treated them with dignity and respect, didn't ask them about their past, only talked about their future, gave them an opportunity to show up in the world. These women have gone on to do great things. I think one of the greatest stories that happened maybe 3 years ago was at a big Dress for Success gala in New York City. I heard about a woman, her name is Anu Iyengar. Anu was the head of mergers and acquisitions for JP Morgan Chase. And we were looking to honor a very accomplished woman in New York City, and her name surfaced for me. And so I went to the powers that be at JP Morgan Chase, said, I want to honor Anu Iyengar. They put me in touch with her. And immediately, you know, this is kind of odd, she said, yes, of course, I'll be honored by Dress for Success. I never got a response to an honoree that quickly. So I was overwhelmed with excitement. Anu, through her network of law firms throughout New York City, because obviously a lot of law firms are on the payroll of JP Morgan Chase, raised about $500,000 for us that night. And one of the things she had to do was she had to do a video talking about what it meant to be honored by Dress for Success. So 2 days before the gala, her video came to me, and I watched it at home. And I heard Anu say that she was a client of Dress for Successes. I completely almost fell off my chair. What did she mean she was a client of Dress for Success? No one had ever told me Anu came through Dress for Success. But she talked about when she was came from India and went to college and got her master's degree. Someone said to her, Anu, you've got to get dressed for that interview at JP Morgan Chase, and you have nothing to wear. But there's an organization called Dress for Success that you should go to. I had no idea we were honoring one of our own. And I'm certain all around the world, there are these tremendous women who have gone on to do great things in their life, but what they really just needed was confidence in the beginning. That suit that we give women is more than a suit. And in many cases, it's her life jacket. In many cases, it's her will to survive. It's her belief in herself. It's that this organization genuinely cares about her and gives her the tools she needs to succeed. And that's been Dress for Success for the last 20 plus years. To watch women grow, to see them soar, to know that we can give her the tools she needs. One of the beautiful things Deanna talked about was beyond the clothing that we give, we really teach women, right? We teach her how to fish. And so we talk about credit repair, we talk about financial literacy, we talk about health and wellness, we talk about leadership. And through this process, we're really teaching her everything we know we need as women in the world of work to prepare ourselves for greatness. And so that when opportunities come up, like what's come up in Deanna's life, when we talked about financial literacy and going back to school, she saw a door open. She went back to school. And then when she got one of her first jobs out of school, and they started to talk about preparing for your future and putting money away and saving toward your retirement, she didn't just close the book like most people do. She realized she went through classes at Dress for Success that taught her about how to prepare for a future. And so I know that a number of people think about Dress for Success, and where you're left is thinking about how you might have donated clothing to our organization at some moment in the past, or donated a suit, or participated in a suit drive. And through that effort, you helped women get back to work. I will say to you that as women lawyers, as professionals in your community, and women who care, because I'm certain that that's what this group is, it's women who care, that there's so many more opportunities for you to get involved in an organization like Dress for Success, or quite frankly, any other nonprofit organization in your community. Dusty and I'll talk briefly, but why I came into Dress for Success is because they needed a lawyer on the board. So for me, I joined because there was an opening. And that opening has transformed my life. I thought I would come to Dress for Success to give something, but what I have gotten is so much more than I could have ever given. To have this opportunity to travel around the world when we traveled around the world, kind of pre-COVID, and my schedule back in the day, a year ago, was a city every week to visit our offices and to travel. My last trip was to Scotland and to London to visit our offices over there, to meet the women of Dress for Success, to recognize that the DNA of our organization is about giving women confidence and treating them with dignity. And that has been the heartbeat of our organization. That's why we've been successful. And that's why the women who've walked through our doors have found success in their lives. I have had a number of women over the years who I've mentored, who have gone beyond the formal mentoring relationship that you have into my friendship bank. There have been women, as you can imagine, who've walked through the doors, who've become a real big part of my life. I have now 3 godchildren from Dress for Success, whose moms first came through the door, who asked me over time to be the godmother to their children. And I take a lot of pride in knowing that I'm part of these kids' lives, and quite frankly, that they're part of my life. There's a young woman who is a Dress for Success client, and it came to my attention that her daughter, a real superstar, who was 14 years old, got advanced from junior high school and took the SAT and ACT and killed it and got accepted into college. So she's my newest mentee, is a 14-year-old college student who is the child of one of our clients. And to watch her just complete her first semester at college at 14 years old, on campus, no less. She decided to come off campus and do remote work from home this semester, but still got a 3.2 GPA her first semester at college at 14. So don't underestimate the women of Dress for Success. They're not disadvantaged. They're not marginalized. They're not women of crisis. They're just us. And some 10, 15, 12 years ago, when we had our first big recession, after a long period of time, We removed the word disadvantage from our mission statement because the women who walked through the doors didn't self-identify as being disadvantaged. They were just simply unemployed. And I will tell you that this She session, we will continue to scrub the organization of any words that label a woman as any less than herself. Because this is an organization for all women. This is an organization that will be available to women who need it. So we're here on International Women's Day. It's a big day. This is our day. We claimed it years ago when it was a sleepy little day, and we, as women, really just celebrated women of the past. Women who we remembered, Eleanor Roosevelt, Rosa Parks. That was International Women's Day, women who had paved the way. Well, this Women's History Month and this International Women's Day, Dress for Success created a campaign. It's called Your Hour, Her Power. And the concept behind the campaign is to ask women and men, ask everyone, to help us make sure that when the vaccinations are handed out and we get on the other side of COVID-19 and women need to get back to work because they can't afford not to, that Dress for Success will be on the front line of the recovery movement. And so we're going to ask you today, all of you, the 67 participants who are on this call, and hopefully you will forward the link on to others, to donate 1 hour of your pay. It's called Your Hour, Her Power. And so your hour is powerful. Your hour has the possibility to change another woman's life. Your hour could change the trajectory of her life so that her children's lives aren't as hard. And so we're all, on this call at least, working women. And we're women who have had great careers and have done well with our lives. And so I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't have done myself. On March 1st, I gave 1 hour. I'm going to ask you today, and I think there's going to be a link in your inbox to give 1 hour of your pay. Listen, it could be billable hours, it could be hourly rates, it doesn't even have to be an hour, it could be whatever you choose to give. But I will tell you, like Nancy Lublin, our founder, there has never, ever a Dress for Success been a gift too small. And in that case, there's never been a gift too large. So whatever you want to give, trust me, it's more than we have. And through your generosity, and I know this is a generous group of women, on International Women's Day, I want you to feel like how I feel. I want you to know that you've left a mark. You may never meet her. You may never see the woman who walks through the door, but trust me, because of you, she will leave Dress for Success standing taller. They always do. Shoulders back, broad smile on her face. She will rock it because of you. And so I want you to know that Deanna is going to give a few more words about her journey through Dress for Success. And as part of International Women's Day, we did a little spin. We're honoring 31 women in the month of March. And so it's called 31 Days of Power. And we have all these C-suite executives from Fortune 500 companies and mid-size and large-size companies that we're honoring. And so I said to my team, the way that people see themselves in positions of greatness is that they've got to be able to touch it. They've got to be able to talk to it. They've got to be able to understand it. It can't be far. It's got to be close. So we asked a series of our women to interview these phenomenal chief executive officers of a number of companies. Deanna's doing the interview. Deanna got to meet an extraordinary woman who is running Alliance Bernstein and is head of their chief HRO, human resource officer, and diversity and inclusion space. And to listen to this conversation between two women, you don't know who's the chief. They both are. You don't know who's doing the interview. But it made Deanna realized when she finished this interview with Janessa Cox from Alliance Bernstein, that she was a woman of power, that she too is someone to be honored, that she is a woman of reverence and someone who should be celebrated. So join me in watching a video, and then Dusty and I will come back to you and have a conversation. Ursula, if you could share your screen and share the video with Deanna and Janessa.
One of the things that, for me, that I've always found amazing to women, especially in for-profit or levels of corporate America, I've always played in a safe zone, right? It's real easy for me to be president CEO of an organization that's focused on the issues that I've encountered.
Right.
But when you're walking into financial, other things, Major League Baseball, football, and different things in corporate America as a Black woman, how do you address those when you sit at those boardrooms? And sometimes you're the only person who looks like you. In this power dynamic that society says is normal of the older white man and different things of that nature, how do you still, in those moments, embrace your leadership, embrace your position, but still maintain who you are and the dynamics not to get beat up in those rooms?
Yeah. It takes a tremendous amount of resilience, which is a word that I know you are very familiar with. Any space that you're in, you have to be very clear and confident in the fact that you are in that space because of you. And that is something I say to Black women all the time. We can't be afraid of taking up the space we deserve. We're here for a reason. No one did me a favor, right? I worked for this. So I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to show up in that space, in that confidence that I am here and I have something additive to give. And so again, always just remembering who I am. I've never been someone who tries to emulate someone else. There are definitely certain traits of people that I gravitate to and that I think are really important, but I always have to put my Janessa spin on it. And I think about one of the probably best/worst pieces of advice I ever got from someone who said to me, it was actually another woman, and she said to me, you're going to have to turn your Janessa down. You're going to have to, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to turn your Janessa down. Verbatim is what she said to me. And I remember looking at her, and I was very junior in my career, and saying, oh my God, does that mean I can't be successful as me, showing up as myself? I am a fast talking, hand moving, that is who I am. I'm a Caribbean person. I have a little spice in me. I can't help it. And her saying that to me, it almost shut me down. And then I just decided, you know what? This is one piece of advice I'm just not going to take. Okay. And that's been, I think, what's been helpful to me. So being in those rooms and operating within constructs that were not built for me or built with me in mind, it's always about grounding myself in that resilience. Remembering my mother, remembering never take no for an answer, but remembering that I'm there for a reason. I have a unique perspective to add, and I'm not going to shy away from adding it. I'm not going to shy away from that. It doesn't matter. I don't care what school folks went to and how many degrees and like all the pedigree. It doesn't really affect me. I think it's more, let's be clear, sometimes it can be daunting, of course, right, and intimidating, but I just always have to ground myself in, I am here for a reason. And I know that. I know that there's something that I can add that you cannot. And so I just have to be very clear about using that and learning the game a little bit, to be honest. I say this to women, we have to learn the game. And the game was not taught to women who may look like you or I. And so I had to learn the game from people who didn't look like me, but who took an interest in me and saw something in me early on that I didn't see in myself. And so I took that sponsorship and I took the fact that they would use their political capital on my behalf. Oh, I had to learn the game, Dan. I had to learn the game because then I needed to teach other women how to play the game that way and play to their advantage. Exactly. And so for me, that's sort of how I ground myself. But I think for you, sort of very similarly, right? And one of the words that come to mind when I think of you and the conversations we've had is fearless. So I know there has to be certain traits for you when you're operating in spaces where folks are probably like, well, what's this woman doing here? What do you draw back on? What do you rely on when you're in those spaces to keep you going? What are those traits that you draw on to keep you moving?
So you're right. Resilience is one. That's actually my license plate on my car, kind of created with a Z. And no, because the reason is because you're right, especially for me having a criminal background and being in the world of criminal justice. Yeah. The judges and prosecutors who prosecuted and convicted me became my colleagues. The correctional facility where I served time, who didn't want to hire me as a cook in the kitchen, actually became a program up under my portfolio when I became director of reentry, right? So, but I didn't okay, let me show you now. I addressed it with a level of expertise.
Yeah.
That as you said, I brought something different. And far too long in this country, people who have been impacted or people who look like me and you have been excluded from the tables of power that make decisions that impact our communities.
I want to build on something you talked about, Deanna. So obviously we're talking about women, we're talking about women's leadership. And I think I can probably describe a couple of your leadership qualities. I can describe a couple of mine. But one of the things that you and I have connected on is this need for female community and the importance of, some may call it a personal board of directors. That's what my girlfriends and I call it, a clique, your crew, your posse, whatever it may be, right? But this community of women that embrace each other, that uplift each other, that correct each other when need be. Talk to me about the importance of that for you in your life and sort of, especially at this point in your life. Now, being the CEO of an organization, right? The air tends to be kind of thin when, you've talked to me about the stats for Black women leading nonprofits and all of that, right? How important is your board of directors now at this stage in your career?
Wow. It is one of the most important aspects of my success. And I'll say that because one or two things can happen. Either I can talk myself into a mess, or if I don't have somebody to run it past, or I will go run, hide, and give up, right? So it's one of those things. So what is that middle, Deanna? What is that middle that keeps you grounded? And it is women who I trust, who are going to tell me the real, even when it doesn't feel good. And then on the other hand, I think I want to give up every 90 days or be like, this is too much. I can't do this. But you have this group of women who actually pour into you why it's so important what you do, why your voice is needed in that space, in that moment. That is not about you. That you talking about giving up is you really being selfish and self-centered, Deanna. You're making this all about you. This isn't about you. You've just been utilized as the vessel to get the message across. How dare you give up on the assignment? And so that has become my strength. I can cry on their shoulders.
Yeah.
I can cry. I can call them when I'm walking into a meeting that I've never been in with elected officials, terrified to death, and get the pump talk that I need. They just pour into me on a different level. And it is so important to have that's outside your world, that doesn't exist around your world. You have to build that support network, that's certain, as you said, that posse of where you're going to be able to talk, but also who respects your personal and your professional boundaries as well. Right. So finding that for 3, 4, 5 women, that this is how you click. And because you're that to them too. You've all built this together. I think it is extremely important. And it has been one of the foundations to my success.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this before. I completely agree. I do not know where I would be without my personal board of directors. We have our group chat that every day we're talking about things that are happening in our personal and professional lives and our family lives. But you need that. You need that. And what's lovely about it is knowing that this group of women, we all have each other's back and we all have each other's best interest. Mm-hmm. Any advice I'm going to give Deanna knows it's coming from a good place. And any advice I'm going to receive from Deanna, I know it's coming from a good place because we only want to see each other win.
Yeah.
And there's such, again, power in that, so much power and collective power in that as well, which I love.
So I want to ask you, understanding Dress for Success worldwide, everything they're doing, what was the attraction for you to Dress for Success, to join and become part of this organization?
This idea of appealing to the outsider. At my core, that's who I am. At my core, that's who I am. From the story I told before, to, being an immigrant, the strange accent, coming to a new place. I know what it feels like to be an outsider and to not always feel like you fit in. And what I love about Dress for Success is that it is, to your point, so much more than the physical clothing. It's so much more. That is clearly an important part. It is clearly a very valuable part, a very critical part, but it's so much more than that. It is essentially women's empowerment. That is what Dress for Success is about. And I'm all about that. I'm all about that. I'm all about the outsider feeling seen, because I think it's important, especially for women, and I think specifically for women of color. And I know Dress for Success, the majority of the clients are women of color, and that matters. Think about the story you just told, Deanna. You going to school, that knock-on effect has led to 17 other women doing the same. 17 other women. And who knows what that knock-on effect will be from each of those 17 for 17 other women, right? So it becomes a multiple. It compounds over time. And that for me is just something that you have to value. You have to respect it and you have to value it. And so what Dress for Success has done in terms of empowering women to embrace their own magic, to embrace their own story, as we talked about, the power and the authenticity, the power in the story. I think what they have done with giving women back their power, you can't deny that. You can't deny that. And so for me, I just gravitated to the organization for that alone, and then getting to meet someone like you and getting to hear some of the stories. I mean, it just was the icing on the cake, but ultimately the organization just does a phenomenal job of reminding women of their magic. And I always think that that's important.
You know, at Just Leadership, we do leadership development and training. And one of the cliches that we use is a lot of times, especially for people who have been marginalized and oppressed, we don't even know we have power, right? We've never been in positions where we've been able to exercise that power outside of our family structure. So when you talk about unleashing power, we have this saying that leaders or empowerment is not tamed, it's caged. And we just want to open the cage. And for me, that's what I could say Dress for Success did. It opened the cage for me to walk out and actually embrace my empowerment, my understand and own it. Because there's a difference of someone saying you're empowered, but once you own that, the trajectory of your life changes, because no one again can strip you of that once you realize you are power within yourself. So thank you. I want to say thank you for being a part of Dress for Success, which I know has an impact on women across this country, even for those who don't even understand the impact yet, right? Is this huge impact that they're having. And I just appreciate women like you and other people who have joined the board to ensure that this organization keeps moving and having a direct impact across the country.
Yeah, it's critical. It has to. Dress for Success has to continue to be successful because of what it does for women. So I think at this point, we've recognized what the year that 2020 has been and the spotlight that was put on marginalized communities in 2020, we can't take our foot off the gas with organizations like Dress for Success.
Wow, Joy, that Deanna, she is a force. You were so right. Who's interviewing who there?
Right.
She's amazing. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about her because she actually went into the Obama administration, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah. So she was part of their whole Second Chance Act. And I remember when she got the call, that whole kind of imposter syndrome starts to happen, right? You apply for a job, you do it sometimes, not necessarily because you think you're going to get the job, but because everybody is kind of cheering you on. Why wouldn't you get the job? Of course you'll get the job. You're competent to get the job. You deserve the job. You interview for the job, and then you get the call from the administration that they want to hire you as a senior policy advisor in the Obama administration. This woman who went to jail at one time, this woman who had addiction issues, this woman she has 2 sons who also went to prison. So her life has not just been this beautiful, winding, yet beautiful road. And so her imposter syndrome started eating at her. I'm not ready. I'm not worthy. They're going to find out that I don't really know everything that they think I know. But you know what? When you have that board of advisors, when you have what they call the kitchen cabinet, when you have girlfriends and friends who tell you that you are worthy, that what they saw in you was what we all see in you, that if you're not there at the table, then that table will not be full. And so she did it. She went, she worked in the administration, and it led her to her new role as the CEO of Just Leadership USA.
So I like how she said that she stepped into her power, and that's what Dress for Success is about. As you were saying, all women have that power, and it's giving them the confidence to step into it. And that's what our spring conference is about, having all women step in to that power. And, you know, I think that the She session really hit everyone hard, but it hit Dress for Success hard because of the way we help women. So I wanted you to talk a little bit, because you did such an amazing job pivoting Dress for Success. So I wanted these women to understand how you took the challenge, choose your challenge, and stepped into it.
Absolutely. You know, I think, you know, smartly, some 15 years ago, we decided that Dress for Success couldn't just be about clothing. That if we truly were going to make sure that women are successful in their work and in their life, that we had to give them the tools they needed to succeed. And so we started to branch off from the clothing model, clothing still being critical, still being often the first introduction she has to our organization, but ensuring that we really create these wraparound services and introduce all of those programs to her. So when COVID closed the doors of Dress for Success, not just here in America, but around the world, it was the one door that felt like it was slamming shut. We wedged our foot in the door and said, we can't close the door of Dress for Success. We've got to pivot. And if we're going to pivot, we got to pivot quickly. So we went digital. We started to introduce new models of success, new ways to introduce women to our organization, new training models, new ways for volunteers to get involved, to step into their leadership by doing Zoom classes and workshops and leadership development. And so we never, ever actually closed our door. The door just looked different, right? The door had Zoom in front of it. And we made ourselves available to her and made sure that she had access to programs and services. I think what we didn't want women to feel was alone. And we didn't want them to feel as though we'd left them. And we're such a high touch organization. When you come into a Dress for Success boutique, when our personal shoppers are with you in where we, you know, have the clothing, there's a lot of touching and a lot of talking and a lot of intimacy that we couldn't experience in a COVID-like environment. So we had to bring that differently. We had to make sure that she remembered that she's not forgotten, that she's part of a community, that we're here with her now and forever. That if she lost her job, we weren't going to let her lose her way. And that we were going to give her all the tools she needed. And in some cases, we were going to make sure that we amped up her skills so that even if she lost her job, when jobs became available again, she'd be ready for the new jobs on the market. And so, so it's been interesting. You know, there's that piece of Dress for Success, which is, you know, seeing her knock on the door and come through the door and needing clothing and giving her that. That still feels like a loss. But we're meeting women where they are now. And we've removed the barriers for how women get to us, right? They had to be referred by nonprofit job training programs. Not anymore. Women can self-refer to Dress for Success. If she has an interview, she wants to go on an interview, what we have is an abundance of clothing. So, and what we have is a beautiful volunteer group that wants to help. So we want to just make sure women have access to other people so that they could succeed.
So I was in that ballroom, and all the times I've been to the gala, you know, as a board member, it's so inspiring. But I was there when Anu told everyone she had been And I'm not sure her colleagues at JP Morgan Chase knew.
No one knew, not her colleagues and not the 25 tables of law firms that she sold tables to. And not only did she talk, first of all, then I took Anu out for lunch about 2 weeks after the gala. And I said to Anu, you blew me away when you shared that you were a client of Dress for Success. And she said, I thought that's why you honored me. I thought you knew. I go, well, Anu, how would I know? Like, how would I know you, the head of mergers and acquisitions globally for JP Morgan Chase, was a client of Dress for Successes? She said, I thought that's why you honored me. I thought you knew. And it just tells you that there's so many Anus out there in this world, Dusty. Just like the Deannas. Deanna is going to go on to something even greater than where she is right now. I just can't wait to see where she shows up in the world next, because it will be greater than I would have ever wished for her. And those are the women of Dress for Success. I've been in hair salons and somebody says, oh, Joy, Joy's with Dress for Success. I've had women like rip the dryer off their head and say, I came through Dress for Success 10 years ago. I'm now a detective with NYPD. That you gave me my first suit when I went in. I mean, it's an organization that women feel really connected to because of how they're treated. It's important to treat people good and be kind to everyone.
Well, and that comes from you, from the top, and that's so important, and it permeates the organization. I've seen it personally, and it's why I'm so dedicated to it. But I have to ask you, and I'm sure these women want to know, what was your path, all these women who are lawyers, for you to become a lawyer?
Right. So I'm completely honest with you. I never went to law school to practice law. I was a journalism major, undergrad. And so I really wanted to be like a legal analyst, right? So I went to law school to get the background in law so that I could, I kind of saw myself kind of like a nicer, sweeter Nancy Grace, right? I figured I had my own show and I'd be talking about cases and people would want to hear my advice. And it was really after my second year of law school, I was working for a defense attorney. I went to law school at University of Oklahoma. And so my mother lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So there I was working that summer with a real high-powered defense attorney. And he said, what are you going to do next year when you graduate? And I said, I'm going to try to get a job at one of the big networks and be like a legal analyst and use my journalism degree in the legal teaching. And he said, well, why would you be believable? Like, you've never been in a courtroom. And I was like, oh, damn it. I got to practice. I was like totally thrown off by the whole discussion of practicing law. And so it was really another person who said, listen, if you want a lot of experience in a relatively short amount of time, you need to get to one of the biggest, either public defender offices or district attorney offices, and baptism by fire, you'll get it. And I applied for and got a job as an assistant district attorney in the Bronx criminal court system. For those of you who know New York City, with all the different boroughs, at that time, which is now some almost 30 years ago, there were 400 assistant district attorneys in the Bronx. I don't know how many there are today, but there were 400 of us as assistant district attorneys. And on any given day, I had a caseload of about 80 cases. So I was learning cases. I was in the courtroom every day, but it wasn't the job I ever wanted. It was the job I had. And then I saw the woman who's founded this organization on the news one day. And I thought, what a great organization. I'm going to donate a suit. And I went from calling her to donate a suit to having a conversation with Nancy on the phone. And she said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a lawyer. She said, great, I need a lawyer on the board. And I joined the board. On the call, joined the board. And then my first board meeting was in that basement of a church. And there was something about it that I fell in love with. I realized if I could be part of something bigger than myself, that could make me whole. And I just kind of tripped right into Dress for Success, and I've never left. You fast forward now 22 years later, I've been employed by Dress for Success, but for 24 years of the 25, I've been involved. And I've seen the evolution of this amazing organization, and the women's lives who've been changed because of it. And the women who help the other women succeed, their lives are changed as well. So it's just been an amazing 2 decades of growth. And I'm very grateful for the law degree, because had I not said I was a lawyer, I might not have been board worthy. So it definitely got me into Dress for Success.
So that must have been quite a journey from Oklahoma to the Bronx. So.
Right. Oh my God. Let me just tell you something. I was born in New York, and I left New York when I was about 12. My mother took a transfer. She worked for a big airline. And so she went on the job board. My mom was a single mom, and she realized she was working about 3 jobs, put me through private school in Brooklyn. And she saw a job posted on the job board for Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she literally put a tack in it, said, I'm going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Came home and said, guess what? We're moving. And I said, where are we moving to? I thought we were like moving from Brooklyn to Queens. And she said, we're moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I could have, oh my gosh. And we got to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was, she got her first home. She became a homeowner. She since has had like 10 rental properties that she owns. She started out in the mailroom of this very large airline, and went to college at night, worked her way up. And when she left, she was an assistant vice president when she retired at 55. And so when I came back, I was this girl in Oklahoma, this girl from New York. And so when I came back to New York, I was the girl from Oklahoma. And it felt like a culture shock, because I had left New York, left big city, and kind of grew up in what felt like the country. But I'm grateful for my time in Oklahoma. I'm grateful for the opportunities that were afforded me while I was there. But trust me, I was on that same airline that took me to Oklahoma. I was on the first jet out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, upon graduating law school back to New York.
I think it was probably culture shock both ways. So tell me about your family now, a little bit about you as a mom, because you're a working mom and you worked the whole time when your kids were younger.
I am. I actually accepted the job of Dress for Success, executive director of Dress for Success New York, when I was 9 months pregnant, and left the board meeting, because I was on the board, when Nancy said, this is going to become a worldwide organization. I'm going to run worldwide. I think you should run the New York office. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And I was very, very pregnant. And I got in the car with my husband, and I said, I feel like I'm having contractions. And so I had my son the next day. So I accepted the job and had my son the next day. So he's my Dress for Success baby. So my daughter is 2 years older. So I talk about the best years of my life have been the last 22. And she's like, what about me? You didn't like me? You didn't have a good time with me? I came first. But it's been amazing just to raise kids, to make sure that they understood volunteerism, they understand giving back. My daughter has her college degree. My son is in college, but started his own company when he was 21. He's killing it. My husband now works for my son. That's interesting. So it's very interesting to see your son as a CEO at 22 years old. My husband's my husband's the COO of their business. It's in Las Vegas. And even though it seems like Las Vegas was shut down, his business wasn't. He's thriving. And it's just great to see that everything I poured into them. And because, I felt like a martyr at times. I felt like I wasn't there enough. I didn't do enough. All of us mothers feel that, you miss the baseball games, the basketball games, the school plays, making cupcakes. But you recognize that you do pour into your kids the right thing. and it allows them to turn out to be exactly who they were supposed to be. So I'm very happy with the lives that they've chosen for themselves.
Well, it's so great to hear that that CEO tradition definitely was passed on.
Exactly. I'm going to work for my son. Trust me. We all are going to work for my son. We know that. We all know that we are all going to work for this kid. He is amazing.
Well, that's great. That is wonderful to hear. And it's great for all the young women on this call to see that you can survive this.
Oh, yeah.
Working mom. It's really, really important. So what do you think the most challenging thing that you've had to face in your career?
Not really my career. I've had a couple of health challenges that, for some people could be setbacks. I try to be this girl, glass half full. And so I don't ask the question, why me? I just say, well, what am I going to do with this? I've had breast cancer, I've had heart issues, and I just get through it. I just power through it. Like, why not me? At the end of the day, why not? And if I am around women who are resilient and women who overcome obstacles, who've come out of stressful and difficult situations only to go on to do great things in their life, then this is my path too. So yeah, there's been some bumps along the way, not necessarily with my career or my successes, but I think the health thing has been the most difficult thing that I've been going through for the last, I'd say, 5 years. But this too shall pass, is how I live my life. And I hope that I become a shining light for someone else so that they can see their path. And I think that's my purpose.
So it's wonderful to hear how our women have empowered you.
Yes.
And they certainly have empowered me too, because you can't, any adversity we face in life, that someone has overcome something else, something more challenging. So it really humbles you.
And Dusty, from day one, I don't know if the other women on the conversation know that you serve on the board of directors of Dress for Success Worldwide as one of my board members. And you are your heart is so pure and you are so kind and you bring such wisdom to the organization and oftentimes such clarity. And you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to be heard, because you never are. But yet I hear you and I see you, and you show up for the women. You've attended conferences that I put on. You've sat elbow to elbow with the women. They don't even know who you are. They don't even know your power, yet you show up for them. And my hope is that on this call, that there are a number of women who are lawyers in Pennsylvania that will also find their purpose, that they will find a nonprofit organization to get involved with locally. It will not just change the organization, it will change your life forever. And I didn't want people to get off this call and not understand how important you are to Dress for Success.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's important to me. Last question, and I just want to tell you how it changed me. So the Success Summit that I went to, and a woman that I met there, and I know you know this, she asked me to be her mentor. And I was so thrilled. And she passed away unexpectedly. I know you know that. And it just changed me, because I wanted to help her so much and I didn't get the chance. But
you did. But you did, because the fact that she had the courage to ask you to be her mentor, and the fact that you said yes, you don't know what that probably meant for her to go back home armed with that. So it was monumental. However short of a life she lived beyond our Success Summit, having you and having any of the women who have dialed in mentor another woman who doesn't look like them, who doesn't come from a path or a journey like them, but just to make yourself available to someone. You made a difference.
Well, thank you. So tell them about that summit, because
the summit is the funnest part of my life. I started this conference maybe 12 years ago. I was invited to speak at a big, huge conference. I was paid to speak. It was in Arizona. It was at a resort. It was all these celebrities and just real powerhouse people. And I remember going to all the workshops, and at night they'd go to the spa or, sit around the fire pit. And I remember coming from the conference and coming back to New York City, and somebody said, "How was it? I hear that conference is amazing." And I said, "Why will there always be conferences for the haves? Like, what about the have-nots? Like, why couldn't a Dress for Success woman go to a conference like that?" And so I created it. I created the Success Summit. It's our leadership conference. And our hospitality partner was Kimpton Hotels and Restaurants. And as you know, those are the 5-star boutique properties from around the world. And so it was all expense paid. We would fly one woman from every city in which we had a Dress for Success, and we take her through a best-in-class leadership conference. And for many women, it would be their first time out of their city, the first time on a plane, the first time being called a leader. And it would uncork something in her where she understood her worth, and she became unstoppable. And so right before COVID shut everything down, the 2018 conference, I honored somebody from Carnival Cruises in Miami. And as the woman was walking out and I was thanking her and giving her her award, she said, "This is such an amazing conference." And I said, "One day we're going to have it on a Carnival ship." And she says, "Would you?" And I said, "Of course I'd have it on a Carnival ship. If Carnival paid for it, we'd bring it onto a Carnival ship, and Carnival paid for it." So our 2019 conference, I took 100 women from around the world onto a Carnival ship for 3 days and brought leaders to speak to the women from all over the world. And it was extraordinary. And we were planning, of course, to go back on Carnival for 2020. And at some point down the road, we'll go back onto Carnival. But you see women walk in not self-sure, not fully confident in her being. But by the time you finish that conference, sky's the limit. And I've seen some women go on to do some pretty extraordinary things in their lives. One of the things they have to do is what we call a community action project. So I say to all women, nothing in life is for free. So if I'm going to bring you here, you got to go back to your community and make a difference. I want to see you show up, and I want to see your leadership in your community. And so these women go back to do some extraordinary things in their communities, and it shines a bright light on them. They get promotions at their job. They go back to school. I had a woman who came on the Carnival ship, and when she was on the ship, she said, "I just graduated with my master's degree." And we said, "Oh my God, we're so excited." She said, "No, I mean, the ceremony was today. I chose to come on the ship." And I was like, "You missed your graduation?" And she said, "I was not going to miss this opportunity to get on the ship and learn from these powerful women. I will forget about going to graduation." So we did a little mini graduation for her on the ship. It's my opportunity to give women access to things they don't have access to. And that's what we've been doing at Dress for Success. I just want to make sure everybody has access and opportunity. And I think if you get the access and the opportunity, you can change your life. And I just want to be part of these women's lives in as small a way as possible. Because every time someone succeeds, I succeed.
So I have to say, what a way to use your legal degree to change women's lives. And
you know what, Dusty, this in 2020, yeah. So my last trip was to London. That wasn't my last trip. My last trip was to go back to Oklahoma because I was getting the Order of the Owl. I was being inducted into the University of Oklahoma Law School Hall of Fame. And I'd never even heard of the Order of the Owl. Like, I think they started the Order of the Owl well after I was in law school. And I was in Oklahoma City when the first outbreak of coronavirus happened to one of the NBA players in Oklahoma City. And they shut down the event, said, Joy, we can't have the event. The school has closed down all events. We can't have the event tonight. We'll have to bring you back at a later time. And I was like, of course, let me get the heck up out of Oklahoma and back home with this outbreak of this crazy coronavirus. But I would have never in my wildest have thought that I would get inducted into the Hall of Fame for my law school for doing the right thing in life. And so it really doesn't feel like that's not an award one should get, because we all should just be doing the right thing in our life. But at some point, probably 2022, I'll get back to Oklahoma to get the Order of the Owl. But it is an honor. I'm grateful for every opportunity, for every door that's been opened for me. And it's my responsibility as a woman and as a leader to open the door for other women. And that's why International Women's Day is so important. That's why Women's History Month is so important. And that's why I'm going to do my last pitch to you to be part of your hour, her power, because you have power. And I would ask you to let your power sit in your hour. Give an hour to someone else. I promise you, anything you give to Dress for Success is money well spent. And we will put it to good use, and we will make sure that there are other Deannas in the world, and Anu's, and Leslie's, and I can rattle off 40 names for you right now of women I know intimately. We're going to invest in her so that she can take care of herself and her children, because our future, all of our futures are depending on it. So please join. You guys created your own page on your Hour Her Power site. So you have your own Pennsylvania Bar, Women's Pennsylvania Bar Association page, and whatever you can give. We really do appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I always appreciate you, Dusty.
And we all appreciate you. So please join me in thanking Joy.
Thank you, Dusty. I appreciate it. I know you guys are going into breakout rooms. And thanks for letting me be a part of this. And I wish you well. I hope everybody remains safe and healthy. And find your cause. If nothing else, find your purpose. Find your purpose. Thank you.
And donate to our page.
Yeah, donate to your page. That should be the page with the most money, because you're all lawyers. So I appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
So at this point, Dustin